Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Corcoran Entertainment Show. I'm your host, Franky Corcoran. Again, just like the last episode, I got my fan on because it's muggy as hell here. I'm recording this during one of our rainy days, which is kind of a bugger. But it is what it is, and I don't know what I prefer, muggy or hot. But anyways, it is what it is. Mother Nature, we can't predict it, so we just got to deal with it. So thank you guys, as always, for tuning into the show. Just before we start, I just want to do a quick plug for, of course, Character Matters Miramichi. Is He Awake? Last Toast to Old Matt Daly. It is going on. Of course, they have just wrapped up their run in Renews at the Folklore Park in Renews. But it will be June 21st to the 22nd at the St. James and St. John United Church. Tickets are $25. And be sure to come on out and support them, guys, because, you know, the reviews, the people have spoken. The reviews are very strong, and we highly encourage people to come on out. And I will certainly be there as well, too. And I'm super excited to see it. And I'm encouraging all of you to come on out and see it as well. I'm super excited to see and have a good laugh. Just have a good laugh, because all I'm hearing about the show is that it's nothing but laughs and a good time. So very excited for that. Definitely be sure, guys. Also follow Character Matters Miramichi on Facebook and all that to keep up to date with all of their upcoming projects and all that. But anyways, all right. So moving on to the show today. So today is I'm bringing back one of our guests. Bob LeMent, who has, of course, been on the show in August, I believe it was. I had to go back. Yep, August. It was back in August last summer when he was last here. And it's almost a full year now, 10 months later. He's back on the show, so very, very excited to have him. We always have great conversations, so I figured there was no better time to bring him back. We talk about a lot of stuff. We talk about what he's been up to. Of course, Bob is the co-host, along with his good buddy Miles Tidal, of Static Radio, one of the first podcasts to ever be created, which is really, really cool. And they've been hosting that since 1998, and we talk a lot about that, what it's like to keep shows original all these, years later, and just a lot of stuff. We talk about a lot of stuff. Bob's a great guy. Always a blast chatting with him. And later in the show, I want to give my thoughts on the article that was released that details why Superbad is never getting a sequel, and Avengers 5 is getting 60-plus cast members. Is that too much? Is that not enough? We'll talk about it later. But anyways, guys, without further ado, just sit back, relax, and enjoy today's podcast. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Corcoran Entertainment Show. I'm your host, Franky Corcoran, and today I am joined by a returning guest who it's been a while since we've had him on, but very excited to have him back. He is actually one of the first podcasters ever in the world, back before podcasts were even called podcasts. Bob LeMent of Static Radio. Bob, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, it's going good. You said you had some rain, huh? Got rain going?
It's raining. It's pouring right now, and I'm actually glad that that we're not lagging right now, because as soon as I said I knew that we were going to record, and then I looked outside, I'm like, oh crap, it's going to mess it up. But so far, so good. The power hasn't shut off on us yet.
Good.
So we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Stay tuned. You never know.
that probably wouldn't be the first time it happened here.
Yeah.
Is that something that you always fear if you're doing a podcast or you're doing a show and you're worried, like your biggest fear? It's almost like a writer's worst fear is writing up a script and then their computer shits the bed and they can't get their document back. Is that a fear that you have sometimes with your podcast, doing it for so long?
Yeah. So, it's happened. So I'm in the Midwest. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. And we just had tornadoes 2.5 weeks ago in the area. I mean, as far as in the area, I mean, not here, thank goodness, but, within, 20 miles, 25 miles, something like that. So yeah, I mean, we get bad storms, especially in the springtime and so forth. And it's happened. I've been recording stuff, and then boom, everything goes away, and you just kind of roll with it. Pretty much finishes the night for the most part. But I mean, thankfully over the years, it's only happened a few times. But the funny thing is nowadays, so with we're on Zoom and everybody uses all these different platforms and so forth now, is the other person was still working. And so unlike with a phone call or something where you get an indication that they're gone, with this technology, it's just a freeze frame, and then eventually you figure out, well, something happened. And so yeah, it's weird. And so then the funny thing is, I think and it's still recording, right? So I use the thing called StreamYard, if you've ever used that, for some things recently. And we had a big storm blow through, I think it was about a year ago or so forth. And I had, I think, a couple people from a couple different places on, and we were talking, and then it's still recording. It's not local, and so it's still recording. So the show, I just kept it as a show because uh, uh, I was gone, totally, gone from everything because all the power went out. And then, but the other people were still talking and amongst themselves for a while, waiting for me to come back. And so then that just became the end of the show.
You just gotta keep it going somehow. Just keep the show
Yeah,
going. Show must
just keep
go on,
going.
is what they always say. So last time we talked to you was August 2023. I had to check that. It was last August we had
Really?
John. That's when it was. I was like, yeah, I said I had him on. It
Wow.
was fairly recently, it feels like. And then I looked, I'm like, no, it's been like 10 months ago.
Yeah.
So where first off, where has the time gone and what have you been up
Yeah.
to since we last talked to you? Of course, Static Radio still going strong since
Yeah.
1998, right? But what else has been new?
So I'm trying to think. So I got involved with this thing called Plausible. I talked to somebody. Her name is Leanne Linsky, and she had created a site called Plausible, which is it's for comedians, right? So the idea is it's kind of like Zoom, but not quite, right? It's its own platform, independent from just online, so you don't have to have a download anything or what have you. And it's for comedians to do shows, and it came about just ahead of COVID. She started it, and then so we've been doing our show live on Plausible, gosh, probably for about 6 months or so, maybe a little bit longer. But basically, you can join anybody can join the audience. You just go to Plausible, and we have our show. We record every Monday night at 9:30 Central. For about half an hour or so, and you can be in the audience, and then the audience can interact. So, the good part is the audience can interact, but the bad part is, maybe you get heckled or something. But so we've been doing that. So we would do it live on Plausible here for the last few months, and it's fun
Oh,
because you just never know who's going to pop in, and we have interaction. So, the Static Radio Show is basically a story show. So the idea is we tell funny stories, right? So we each, Miles, my co-host, and I, we try to tell. It's either a strange or humorous story is kind of the idea behind it, and the goal is to crack up the other person for the most part. And so we still do that, and then some people will join in to watch, and then usually at the end I ask them if they have a story, and so it works out. We bill it on the platform as stream of consciousness comedy, because that's essentially what it is. So we because Miles and I don't talk ahead of time, we don't do much planning. Basically, we have a germ of an idea of what we're going to talk about before we get on. We don't tell each other, and then we tell our story and hope for the best. And then it becomes a big riffing kind of thing. So we riff off each other because somebody might say something that spins you in a new direction, and you're like, oh, I could use that to make my story more humorous. And it goes back and forth like that. So it's been really fun because, I mean, we've done it for so many years, just with us, and now this adds a whole new element of things. And and sometimes people join in, and some people just like to watch and see what we're saying. So whatever, it works for me. But it's interesting. it's an interesting way to go, and it kind of is a little bit different. You know, if you sometimes you do these things in isolation, right? And you do get feedback from listeners, but every listener doesn't give you feedback, right? So you have like a percentage, and it's generally not a high percentage because you know, you can look at your stats and you look at your people getting back to you, and it's not one to one or anything like that. So this is really it gives you a little bit more immediate feedback and so forth. So it's kind of interesting. I would, if somebody was thinking that they might like to do something, it's a good place to practice.
Yes, and got to start somewhere. And
Right.
I mean, it's good to get that like almost like instant feedback, which is good
Mm-hmm.
because you work so hard on something and then like it's like months later people see it and then that's when you get it. You're like, "Oh shit, if I had known that before." But getting the instant feedback
The instant
is
feedback.
it's
Yeah.
really good. It really helps too. I mean, going through these changes from since 1998 to now, which is crazy that I'm saying 1998. I'm sorry if I say
Right.
that and you're like, don't say that.
Oh my gosh, Frankie, where's my where's my walker?
He's like, where's my dentures?
Yeah, where's my teeth? Yeah,
Bob doesn't
exactly.
have any dentures. He's just talking through gums right now.
It's right, exactly. Yeah. I feel that way when you say it. I mean, you think about it, like, holy moly, that's a long time ago.
It is
Um,
because, like I said, I said I may not, I may have, it may have been like right before I was conceived that you started doing this.
yeah,
So it's crazy to think about that. So in a way, I've grown up with this show with Static Radio.
there you
But
go. A
when you're
lot of
going through
people.
all these changes as the years go by, are you open to the changes? Are you?
Oh yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
how is it like when you want to splice things up after a certain point? You want to splice things up. How much of an adjustment can it be?
Oh well, I think we always try to hold true to the storytelling aspect of things. That's really the main thing. But I mean, technology changes. We've done all kinds of different technology. You were talking to a cartoon, which is part of the technology that's changed. And I'm, you know, kind of you know, I love to experiment with things. And so all through all the years, you know, when we first started out, basically it was a microphone that was fed to my computer and a speakerphone. So Miles was on the speakerphone. I was sitting there with the speakerphone and the microphone, and that's how we recorded the show. And then it recorded straight to the computer, which even at the time back then was not, you know, I mean, it wasn't very high tech, but the fact that I was even using a computer was more high tech than most people recording things at that time. And so, but over the years, we've done Skype, we've done, like I mentioned, StreamYard, we've recorded stuff on, we recorded stuff via Zoom, we've recorded stuff now via Plausible. I mean, the technology constantly changes, and so I love to try it out. And then, like this little character that you're watching here, is part of that. Back in I want to say 2018. I have to look it up, but somebody a long time ago had said, I would love to see your show animated. And so over the years, this was probably even back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. And I was like, oh, I wonder how I could do that. And so I kept that idea for probably about 10 or 15 years. And then finally, I hit upon, I had access basically to something that could allow me to do that. And so this little character was because I wanted to do that. And if you look, there's like a lightning bolt, and then there's some green stuff over there on the one side. That is where I've zoomed in a bit, but that's where Miles would sit, and then he had a character as well. And then I would animate the show. But the problem was, and this is the hard part. Back then, is even today, it's still hard. But I couldn't do it live like we're doing it right now. I had to, because he doesn't have the equipment or the technical savvy to do it. So I had to do everything post production, and it became, I did it for months, but it became very demanding to post produce and render an animated thing, because basically I would set up, I would record us on separate tracks. I would feed his voice track to his character, my voice track to my character, and then I would have to render it. And sometimes it would take overnight to render this. And then in the middle of the night, it would die. and then you got to start over again. And then, during the day, I have to use the computer for other things other than rendering cartoon cats. And so I have to do it. So then I would have to do it the next night. And then we have a weekly schedule that we've kept all this time. And so then it started to eat into my week, quite a bit. And so eventually I went on vacation. And when I came back, I said, I don't think we're going to do this animation thing anymore, because it's just, and then the files were just enormous, because I would have to have several large files that I would be storing to do all this. And so it just became overly demanding. And then when I started to do guesting, I dusted off the cat, and I said, well, it allows me to do this live, like we're doing right now, on my end, and so I can do that for the guesting parts. And that's how the blue cat became part of this new world here. It's really hard if you've got there's two of us on the show, and we always do the show and so forth, but it's a little harder whenever the other person isn't got the same technology that you have. So, it gets a little bit weird like that, to try to keep up, and we don't live anywhere near each other. And so it's not like I can just go next door and say, okay, here's how you do it. It would be a whole involved kind of thing. And so eventually, I mean, actually they have them like in Zoom, you can do avatars and whatnot now. And eventually we'll get back to it once it kind of gets, I'll get back to where he's animated as well, possibly, once it gets to that point. But I actually like this character a little more than most of the avatars that are available, because it has a certain aesthetic that I don't see in most of those avatars. I don't know if you've noticed that or not.
Yeah, no, there's pretty cool stuff actually. Well, I mean, like the people can't see this because it's audio, but if you notice right here, it's funny that my wall here is green. Like that's just
Mhm.
that's a paint. Watch how well that blends in. Like you see that? Like how cool is that?
Oh
You
yeah,
see that?
that's good. You're
Like
keying it all out.
that is so neat. Like I can't get over like just the technology that we have now, and like yeah, avatars on here. Like there's so much stuff that we can do now that it's funny like in a way it's good, in a way it's good because I mean like we're trying to, because you look at the old days where that's part of history. That's part of history. Why history is a big part of schools and stuff like that. So we can learn how not to repeat history. We
Well,
learn.
one would hope. One would hope.
Yes, exactly. One would hope. But you see like how we do it through this here where we're finding all these different methods and how different things were back then when it came to editing. Nowadays it's just we got AI who can do this stuff right
Mhm.
now. Have you
Yeah.
used much AI stuff or
I have.
no?
Well, I
Yeah.
have. Yeah. So this year, so each year, as far as show art goes, I always try to come up with some type of uh, well, another experiment, if you will. So each year, not at the beginning, but after we got going and show art became part of the mix here. So that was quite a while now. I usually try to come up with a different way to do show art. So this year, started in January, all the show art is AI. So I basically I basically take whatever I'm going to call the show. So last night it wasn't last night, it was earlier this week, but last time it was we called the show Dolphin Star. And so I type into the to Photoshop I say Dolphin Star, and then I see what I get. And it's interesting, and I try not to manipulate it too much, right? So the idea is I'm going to get whatever AI gives me, and that's kind of what's happened all this year for all the show art. So I come up with a title, and then I come up with a prompt. And so sometimes the titles don't necessarily become the full prompt like Dolphin Star, but a lot of them do. And then I put that in, and then it gives me like three choices or whatever. I pick my choice, and then that becomes the show art. I add I add text on it and logos and that kind of stuff. But other than that, that's how I've been doing that this year. And so I find it interesting because some of them are beautiful and some of them are incredibly off the mark. But it's okay because that's kind of the experiment to see what we get at the end of the year. So In the past, I've done only icons. So every show had to just be an icon. And so I would go out onto the internet and find all these different icons that I could use to go with what the name of the show was. I've done only photographs. I've done only clip art. I've done, all these different techniques just to keep it interesting to me. And then also along the way, I learned something, right? So I learned that how to use this technology, right? So that's the interesting part. Now on the I've been using the latest version of Photoshop, the beta version that has all the AI baked into it. And I will do so in Photoshop. You can just select the whole screen and get type in your prompt, and then you'll get what you get right from the AI. Or you can do selections on top of layers. And so sometimes I will layer it because sometimes the AI doesn't necessarily it like seems to get stuck. I think I'm trying to remember the name of the show, but it had the word guitar in it. And I think it was called Guitar Crush or something. And I wanted a crumpled guitar, right? But all it only thing it really paid attention to was the word guitar. And I just got all this guitars. And so then, I mean, I could not phrase it any way. If I had the word guitar in there, all it would do would give me more and more guitars. And so, you kind of have to fiddle with it a little bit every once in a while because it just gets like stuck. It's almost like it can't get past that word, And I don't know what and they're going to come up with new terms for this kind of thing where is that the AI's got like an earworm that it can't get rid of because it only wants to give you these particular things. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I did I recently did a thing with a guy named Trevor Doyle, and his bit is that he asks you to provide prompts for a story. And then he feeds those prompts into Chat GPT AI, and it kicks out a story. And so then the idea usually is to pick something that is of known, a known writer or a known, term. So I did what you do then is you read the story as is. And so then my job was to read the story. And it was really fascinating. I'd never done that. And I want to thank Trevor for, doing that, introducing me to this because it was really, really fascinating because he didn't manipulate it at all. It was like George Miller, Jack and Jill, post-apocalyptic water, fetching or whatever. And it just spit out, like it was probably, I'm trying to think how long it was. It took me about 5 minutes or so to read. So it was a little bit of length there. And it was a whole story. It started with them. It set up the environ as post-apocalyptic, and the idea is you read the story, and then at the end you tell everybody what the prompts were, and then you discuss whether or not it came close. And it was all kind of fascinating because it actually did. I mean, it wasn't a great story. I'll be honest with you, because you're a writer, and so you know how these things are. But it actually did have a lot of the elements that you would expect from that prompt. And it really was a weird, kind of a weird experiment to do. And, it was fun. It was a fun thing to do. And then, there's nothing, there's no great, no great shakes as far as the story and writing goes, but it certainly is weird to consider it that it all just kind of came out of that. So, I'm wondering, if we take it further, I'm wondering what's going to happen. There's with AI has to, it's not really intelligent. I mean, everybody loves to keep saying AI and artificial intelligence. It's artificial. It's not super intelligent. It is basically big data. So it has to have in its database, it has to have gone through something from George to know who George Miller is, has to have something to know what Mad Max is, and it has to have something to know what Jack and Jill is, right? So if that, which probably is going to be happening in the near future, if all that data gets restricted, then that's just nothing. That means nothing unless those things are in the database. If all these lawsuits go through and everything, and they have to pull out copyrighted material from the database, which would mean Mad Max and George Miller's things, Jack and Jill would still be out there because it's a public domain, but anything related to that would be taken out of it. So then the context would totally change. George Miller could just be a guy in a phone book, and he doesn't have any. There's nothing that whenever I say that name that means anything to the AI. So yeah, I mean that's the interesting thing to me. I actually even did a short. I have a friend of mine who's psychologist about it. It's not really artificial intelligence. It's artificial plagiarism, because that's all it's doing is plagiarizing everyone in order to come up with something. Now, it's cool that it can do that because that's something that has not really been done before. But as far as intelligence goes, it's not really thinking about things. It's just pulling, putting strings, tying strings to things that already exist and pulling them together, which, I mean, at the speed that it does it, seems very intelligent. But I mean, if you really think about it, it's just because we don't think as fast as computers and we can't store as much information and access it as quickly. So that's my thought. I don't know what you think, Frankie, but tell me.
I mean, like, yeah, like I like AI. I mean, like I'm not a fan of the AI to the point where it's costing people their jobs, because it's like, okay, we don't need you anymore because we have AI, which I mean, saving money, whatever you're doing. I mean, okay, I guess, but I do like a lot of what AI does because uh I found this one. I was trying to I was putting together a new script, and I was trying to come up with some titles for it. I found this AI title generator, and you just basically type in the keywords of your story. I basically wrote my whole synopsis in there almost, and it generated a bunch of titles for you. Like about 10 different titles came up, and if they don't work, you can refresh them, and a bunch more come up. So there are advantages to AI, and I really, really do admire like what it's trying to do and make things easier, but I also don't like the fact that it's also costing people their jobs. Like that was one of the problems with the writer's strike that was going on, of course, this past summer, was that they were just going to replace all of their writers and actors and stuff just with AI. They even did a comedy special, George Carlin. They basically used AI and had George Carlin, the late great George Carlin, basically resurrected him to do a modern day stand-up comedy routine. He's talking about the pandemic, everything going on in today's day and age. And to a certain extent, it's good, but also I'm like, okay, that's George Carlin, like, let the man rest kind of thing. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, no
that's
kidding,
that's that's kind of my thoughts on that. So AI has its ups, it has its downs, but ultimately, as long as everybody can keep their job and whatever it is they're doing, that's really the important part for me, because nobody should go jobless. I mean, what would happen if static radio just turned into, okay, we don't need Bob and Miles anymore, let's just replace them with AI? Like,
Yeah,
what would
we'll
you
do
do
AI.
then?
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't think, at least not at this point, is it I mean, never say never, right? But at this point, it doesn't think like a human necessarily, and so it's going to be different. Just like the writers, they have this vision that we're going to be able to get rid of the writers and just have them do AI things, but we already are living in a world of such derivative stuff, right? You're a person, I think, that is trying to get something original out there and to try things that are different, right? AI is never going to do that because it can't. It has to think about what's in the database, and then it pulls from there. It may seem original, but I think it only seems original because you don't know what the data is. If you knew all the data, then it would be like, yeah, okay, I got it. It's here, right? So it's taking this from that. But with you as a human being, you have the ability to ponder these things for a good amount of time and maybe come up with something that no one else has really covered, or at least in a way that they haven't covered it before. And so, even though they want to try to replace all the writers this way, unfortunately, it's just going to make everything more derivative, and eventually it becomes so derivative of what's before it that it falls apart, right? It's not going to be anything interesting to people. I mean, I think, well, I sit there, this is kind of like a hobby maybe, and I read news stories, and I try to read news stories, and I'm like, okay, this is AI generated. This is not written by a person. And then, they don't necessarily, there are sometimes some sites will tell you, right? All of them won't. But when you read something, there's always a hint of that it is AI generated, because it following that model, tell them what you told them, tell them again, a little too closely, and literally uses a lot of the same words in those three variants, right? So it tells you, and then it tells you again, and it tells you again exactly like it told you, as opposed to what most people do, which is try to vary it up a little bit, so that way it doesn't become repetitive. And so any story you read that's repetitive now, chances are there's some AI behind it, because that's what AI does. Because it doesn't see it as repetitive. It sees it that I'm accomplishing the goal that this person wanted me to accomplish. And so, yeah, I go through articles and I'm like, okay. And then sometimes I'll start reading an article, and then as soon as I get that whiff of AI, if you will, I stop reading it. I go someplace else,
You just smell the
because
bullshit.
yeah, exactly, exactly, because I don't want to hear the same thing three times. I love movies and things like that, so I read a lot of things on movies, and a lot of these are AI generated. I mean, you can just tell. Sometimes the pictures don't even match what they're talking about, because it's a picture of the actor but not of the character.
Mm.
And I don't know if you've noticed that before, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not, I mean, that's, Gene Hackman or whatever, but that's not Gene Hackman from French Connection. That's Gene Hackman from something, totally different. And I think that's all AI generated, because that's not the way people think. If I said I want a Frankie Corcoran article, they're not going to get your first grade picture and put it on there. But AI might, because that's all it has in the database.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Or they'll find some real embarrassing picture of me that's out there on the internet somewhere that I don't wanna. It's like there's this one picture of Beyonce that it was apparently she was so embarrassed by it that people were it was like Beyonce is like she wants people to delete this photo, pretend it never happened. So then naturally, of course, when she said that, because
Right.
everybody is just a bunch of dicks, they just that's when they start sharing it over and
Right.
over and over and over again. So if they say, "Hey, Beyonce's new concert," and they put that picture up, it's like, like sometimes it like, and if it's AI, that's just what's in their system. They
That's
just go with
yeah.
that. They're not a human. They don't have any feelings. They're like, oh,
Mm-mm.
I shouldn't do this because it's gonna hurt Beyonce's feelings. But AI is just basically, no, fuck that. Let's just put it up.
Yeah, this is the best. This is the most popular picture of her, so we're gonna put it out there.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And it
Yeah.
really because I'm going to talk about this later on in the show about quality over quantity. That's even true with AI, because I mean, I know I get it, because AI, if they're trying to save money on hiring writers and this and that they
Mm-hmm.
want to just use AI to take care of all that basically, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not getting the quality content. I mean, what's your
No.
thoughts on quality and quantity, and what's more important?
Oh, I think the problem is they're all going all in on quantity, and
Hmm.
basically, everybody's getting flooded with all these AI articles and images and everything else out there. I mean, what was I looking at just today? I think it was, or maybe it was last night. But anyway, there's these pictures, and I don't know what kind of filter they're putting on them, but I don't know if you've noticed this with looking at pictures of celebrities and so forth, but they don't even look like the celebrity anymore, because they're so filtered, and it's not filtered. I mean, they take basically uh, a somewhat known picture, and then they filter it so much that it doesn't even look like the people. And sometimes I don't think it even is the people. I think sometimes it's they've pulled the wrong person and put this filter on there. But it seems to be a trend. But I think quantity is really winning the day at the moment because people think it's so easy. I'll just keep doing this, right? And I think that's what's going to happen is more and more people are going to tune out from all that, right? Eventually, they're going to ruin their audience because let me put it this way: I hope they ruin their audience by doing that
So they
because they
learn their
do too
lesson.
much. Yeah, but I have a feeling, unfortunately, they won't necessarily ruin their audience. But I wish they would ruin their audience so that way they would move back to doing something that's a little more, a little more interesting. But yeah, we're just gonna. There's just a deluge of stuff, and anything that's trending, there just becomes more and more piled onto it because they're gunning for clicks, and it's just it's bad all the way around. I loved hearing recently that all the socials, right? I think everybody kind of got together on this. Was like reposting is not going. We're not going to push those on the algorithm anymore. So if you repost and repost and repost, and you're reposting the kind of the trending things, we're not going to give you the audience in the algorithm anymore. And I thought, well, that sounds very admirable, right? Because what can happen and what has happened is popular people will repost something that they had nothing to do with, and then they get all the attention, even though they had nothing to do with it. And it really is kind of a I don't even know what you call it. It's the rich get richer kind of a situation whenever that happens, because once they garner a certain size audience, then it doesn't matter what they post, they're going to get more of an audience. And unfortunately, the people who actually made that, be it a meme or anything that they created, it becomes out of their hands and goes over to this other spot. I mean, I think about all the, well, you grew up with it, so the Charlie bit my finger, kind
Mm.
of things, and Star Wars Kid and all this kind of stuff.
Numa
All
Numa.
that Uma Numa kind of got out of their control. I mean, to where they didn't benefit from that as much as possibly other people did. And I think it's good, but you and I both know that if it's a Beyonce posting this, they're not going to curtail her audience. They're just going to curtail all these kind of hangers on type audiences, and the bot audiences, I think, is what they're going to do. But still, at least it's a step in the right direction, a little bit.
Yes, exactly. Or like someone like Beyonce, or even like I don't know, like Donald Trump. I mean,
Donald
for
Trump,
him, I
yeah.
mean, I don't think he cares. I really don't think he
No.
care because with him, it's just, I mean, who knows what's happening with him now? Of course, now that he's a convicted felon.
Mm,
But someone comes posts an embarrassing picture up of him. I'm sure he'd be like, whatever, who cares?
who cares?
Uh,
Yeah.
do you follow much politics, or do you keep up to date with all that stuff, or?
Well, Frank, I'll tell you my opinion on politics. I don't really follow it too closely, to be honest with you. And I've always been forever on the throw the bums out kind of thing. So I've always joked in a way, but it is my opinion. I think politics should be just like jury duty, that no one wants to do it and you get forced into it, and it's the worst experience you ever have, and you want to get right out of it. And so unfortunately, that's not the way politics, at least in the United States, is. People hang in there for their whole lives and build power and money and everything. And I really think that needs to not be the case. I think they need to change the rules, so to speak, and make it so unappealing that you have to go and vote and everything, and put you in dorms. You know what I mean? Like where you're paired up with two people randomly, like you're going to college, and and make it such a horrible experience that you don't want to be a part of it, because I think too many people at this point, special interests and whatnot, have taken taken over. It really shouldn't be, and it really wasn't. If you read into history, at least in the United States, it never was intended to be that. It was intended to be like jury duty. It was intended to be, you're a farmer somewhere in the country, and you unfortunately get picked to go and make the votes. And it was only a shortened thing too. It wasn't a year-round thing. It was only usually over the winter time, whenever there wasn't any work to do on the farm. And now it's blown up into careers and celebrity and all this other stuff. And I mean, in Canada, you'd have to talk a little bit more about that for me. But I think that is kind of my opinion on it. And so therefore I try really not to get involved in all the kind of the drama of it all, because essentially they're doing no one any good with that. They're doing themselves good by getting more popular or more known. But as far as the people go, who cares? Did you get legislation passed that fed somebody, or fixed a road, or made changes in our infrastructure so that we could have cheaper utilities? I mean, that nobody talks about those things in politics because they're boring. But that's exactly what they should be doing. That's exactly where they should be focusing their attention, is what's going to help my fellow country people have a better life, not what's going to help me have a better life. But unfortunately, I think that's the case.
No, exactly. And I agree with you. I like, it's funny when politics come up, I'm like, I really, and it's even hard to give your opinion on podcasts, because if you say one thing, people will spin it and go, "Oh, he said this and that." Like
He's a
I've given,
communist.
yes, I give my opinion about Trump, and people might throw shade at me. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, no matter what you say when it comes to politics, like, that's why I was kind of curious if like you ever talked about that online, like politics
No.
views. Like, it's tricky because it's something where, and I mean, like, it's weird, but that's just how the internet is. If you have a different opinion than them, then it's like you're an enemy. I say Donald Trump is insane. People might throw great. Which, I mean, am I wrong? I'm not that wrong. I don't think
Well,
I'm
I think
wrong.
that I would say they're all insane. If you ask me, I mean, anybody who, I mean, obviously there's something to be had by getting into politics, right? And there is I think it's a large barrier to entry. It's so large a barrier to entry at this point that regular people cannot get into it, right? Monetarily, you have to have either, you need to have money, or you need to know people who want you to be there to have money. And then if you know people who want you to be there, then guess what? Now you're working for them, and you're not working for the people who are putting you in office in the first place, who are supposed to be, or you're supposed to take all your constituents and be fair amongst all of them, not just the ones who gave you a couple $1 million to campaign. And so, yeah, it gets very twisted nowadays, and that's why I think it if you did it like the jury selection, basically all of a sudden you get this letter in the mail. It says you've been, you know, your jury duties next week, and then you're like, oh crap, how can I get out of this? And that's the way it should be, if you ask me. And I haven't gotten really any backlash, but on our show we don't really talk politics hardly at all, other than we might make fun of whatever's in the news, right, as far as that goes. But we don't really talk politics per se, but I don't mind giving my opinion of it, because unfortunately, I don't think that there's a lot of people. I mean, there may be a lot of people with my opinion, but my opinion doesn't necessarily, people are just like, what is that? They can't get behind it, because it's not a us versus them argument. I'm basically saying they're all terrible, and we should just start over with this, keep the same system, but start over with new rules.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. That's a good way to put it. Actually, let's just do that. Let's just start, fresh slate. Get rid of
mhm.
everybody who's in office right now. New slate. Let's just start
Yeah, new
over.
slate. Yeah, and I mean, it's because we've had 200 years of bastardization of the system that we've got to where we've gotten. I mean, I think isn't Canada have you have prime minister and you can dissolve your government, correct, at any point, and then come up with a new government uh, because of the way you handle things. Isn't that correct?
I believe so. I'll be honest. I actually don't know much about the politics here, to be honest with you. It's like it's so
Well, you
funny.
have like it's more like a Britain. So Britain, the Parliament can dissolve the government essentially, and then rebuild it. Now, unfortunately, they do it in the same sense. You know what I mean? But I think that that's the parliamentary procedure is such that, and I think that's what you guys have there in Canada as well.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and so I mean, I think that's
rebellion,
interesting.
basically.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's good. But I mean, unfortunately, there's so many players that when they rebuild it, it's kind of got, it's just okay. Now you're on top and I'm lower, and you know what I mean. They're all still got their fingers in the pie, so to speak. But you know, here it never really. It just keeps churning along. So many people complain that we have two parties, right? We got the Republicans and Democrats, and there is a libertarian force out there that is not, up to the task. I should, basically say it that way, I guess. And we historically we haven't been a two-party system. If you get back into the 1800s and so forth, the two-party system really kind of came about during the Industrial Revolution. And so we used to have, the Whigs and the Federalists and all these other parties way back when. But now it's kind of whittled down just to the two, which, you know, mm, I don't know what party I would be a part of if I had to pick one. That's the other thing. I hate picking a party because it's like you get all the baggage that party has. Well, what if I want to pick, pick a mix, right? The little old candy where you pick out whatever candy you want, you put it in the bag, you weigh the bag, and you just get that rather than having to take a whole box of candy. So yeah, I would rather do something like that where you get to pick and choose what views you want to have and what areas you want to concentrate on.
Have your cake and eat it too, basically.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah,
wants that,
that's a
don't
great way
they?
to put it. That's a great way to put it. So Bob, man, I was gonna say it's always a pleasure talking with you. Like it really is. I mean, like you and I could go on for hours about this stuff, which is great. And really shows that I mean, like you're a pro. You know what you're doing. Like you're no stranger to radio, and or podcasts. And it's funny that you actually are one of the first podcasters, as I say, before podcasting was what was even a name. And I just want to thank you for coming on today again. And is there anything that you'd like to say to the audience, or any last parting words, or?
I mean, that's a good question. Listen to Frankie. He's got lots of stuff going on. He's a great guy. You know, always support your local people as much as you can. Because we don't always get the big spotlight, and so always try to do what you can to help those folks shine, because they're not always going to get. I've been talking recently about Joe Rogan. I don't want to sound like terrible against Joe Rogan, but I'm like, I really, really wish, because podcasting is kind of coming to its own at this point, really. And I really, really wish that somebody who wasn't a celebrity beforehand was the number one person in podcasting, because then it's kind of like an art form, right? And so then you have a person that's just from that art form. Joe Rogan's not from this art form. Joe Rogan was a stand-up comic. Joe Rogan was a sitcom person. Joe Rogan was a host of television shows.
UFC commentator.
Yeah, and UFC, right? And so it really would be nice if we had somebody who was totally like yourself, totally comes from this environment where this new media was emerging, and they became the person. So that's what I wish for, and I wish that people would, not that you have to consider that in your choices or anything, but put it in the back of your head and think, wow, I'm kind of always voting for the underdog in all these things, and so that would be my hope, that people would always, consider it. You know what I mean? It's not the most popular necessarily at the moment, but it may be the best person, and they're just not getting that chance.
Just a chance to shine is all you need. That's really
Yeah.
all you need. And and congratulations to you on all the great years of Static Radio. Here's to many more. And let's definitely do this again sometime. We'll definitely have to do another
Yeah.
catch up sometime. Absolutely. For the
Yeah.
second.
Yeah. Maybe next year we'll just make it an annual.
Yes, exactly. The annual today or this year's 2024 annual Bob LeMent and Franky Corkin crossover episode.
There you
That's
go.
what this is. That's
Sounds
perfect.
fantastic.
Guys, we are going to take a short break. We will be right back. But until then, this is Franky and Bob signing off. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you. Take care.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Corkin Entertainment Show. That was me and Bob LeMent. Where I got Mike from. Me and Bob LeMent of Static Radio. Thank you so much, Bob, for coming on. And guys, be sure to check out Static Radio and look up Bob LeMent, Static Radio, all that stuff on Google, YouTube, and be sure to listen to what he does, because he does some great stuff. Him and Miles. Don't want to single Miles out. Miles is great too. Anyways, guys, so yeah. Moving on. Sorry, I just had water. All right. Jeez, I'm all over the place now. Moving on to the solo segments. Yeah, because we do those too. I wanted to talk about this little thing about. Oh, it's funny, we're talking about quality over quantity or quantity over quality. We're kind of talking about both. This one here, I got to talk about this. Superbad is hands down one of the best movies ever made. Like, one of the funniest movies ever made. I can't put into words just how. I mean, anybody who's seen it knows. Like, I really don't have to. I guess someday I could do like a throwback review of Superbad. That actually, you know what? That might be a good idea. Maybe I'll do that someday. Just to look back on it, because it is such a funny movie. Oh my god! Like, I mean, Seth Rogen. What am I freezing? Michael Cera, Jonah Hill, Christopher Mintz-Plasse. I mean, McLovin now is just so iconic in cinema. He's so friggin' iconic. And just everything about that movie was great. Emma Stone was great in it. And so people have been saying for years that there has to be a sequel to it. And I think that's just normal with any popular movie, especially like with comedy. People will say, "Oh, the first one was so funny. It was this and that." There has to be a sequel to it. They have to make a sequel to it, which I get that to a certain extent. But when it comes to Superbad, and it's kind of funny that this comes out now, but I really don't think it's a good idea to do a Superbad 2. Every time someone asks me, or it would just come up in conversation with someone, and we'd say hey, it'd be so cool to have another Superbad. I'd always say, yeah, I mean, I guess, but I don't really think they should. I mean, the first one was so good. Now, granted, if the original writers and creators and stuff like that of the first one were on board, then absolutely, I would completely support it. But now we find out that even if a Superbad 2 happens, it's not going to be the originals, of course, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, because this article I'm reading is Unilad. It's not the only article that's reporting this. It's all over, but this is just the first one I grabbed out of the hundreds here. Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg confirm Superbad 2 will never happen. Superbad remains among the most popular comedy films of the 2000s and was the first full-length film written by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, which is crazy. For a first film, the first film that you're writing, that's fantastic. That is really, really good. While the comedic duo has since written and directed several highly praised films in the 17 years since the movie came out in 2007, a few of those films have been as personal to the two writers as Superbad was. This is because the first scene of Superbad was originally written when two childhood friends were just 12 years old, with the script then evolving as the two grew as a pair, as writers and partners. Considering the pair, that's where I got the word pair from. That's where it came from. Considering the pair continues to co-write and direct movies to this day, this may make you wonder why they have never revisited what many consider their magnum opus, as a sequel would undoubtedly do huge numbers among fans of the original Superbad. And I agree with that. I think if they did do another Superbad movie, now depending on how good or bad it is, it would be a hit. It really, really would be. But like we look at quality over quantity. Do you want to do one that's going to be super successful, but if the quality isn't up to par with the first one, then it kind of ruins it? It's kind of tricky. And then it says, however, if you were hoping to hear them announce a sequel to the 2007 film, I'm afraid I've got some bad news. Neither men have any ambition to make a continuation of their inaugural film. Speaking alongside one another to Complex, the writing duo was asked about how they feel about making sequels to their movies, something that they have rarely done up until this point. While they are open to the idea, there are certain movies that they consider are too sacred to try and recapture. We're not opposed to revisiting some things like Sausage Party, Goldberg teased. Superbad and Pineapple Express we will not be revisiting. We will keep those safe and sound. There are a few things that are best left untouched. Sausage Party, like, my God, that was a crazy one. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, did they do a sequel to that? I can look that up here. I feel like not like a feature length. I think they did something for Netflix or something. Oh, right here. Yeah, Sausage Party Foodtopia. They're doing one. It's coming out on Amazon Prime. Okay, so I guess they kind of did do a sequel for it. I remember I read something about that. But anyway, so carrying on. While this may break the hearts of some fans, others are likely pleased with the duo's decision, as a fear lives in the hearts of many film fans that the sequel cannot live up to the contents of the original. The pair then, okay, sorry, I'm just gonna go back to that one. That the sequel cannot live up to the contents of the original. I agree with that. There are sequels that almost rival the first ones in a way, like Anchorman. Anchorman, I think, is probably my number one comedy of all time. I absolutely love the first Anchorman. Anchorman 2 was fantastic. It was like right up the par. Like it's one of those ones you're worried that if they do a sequel, it's not going to be as good. No. Anchorman 2 like matched it like perfectly. I still prefer the first one. Like if you had to give me a choice, what one's better, I would absolutely go with the first one. But the second one is, the fact that it's matched, it was able to match the first one is a pretty impressive victory right there. Other films like Ted and Ted 2, like same deal with Anchorman. Ted 1 was fantastic, one of the best comedies of all time, one of the funniest comedies of all time. They make a sequel. It's not as good, but it's still hilarious. But and even then, there's moments in Ted 2 that are probably funnier than Ted 1. So there's definitely advantages of sequels, but I personally am not upset at all at the fact that they just decided, Superbad is just too, we're not going to touch that at all. The pair then explained that the last thing they would want to do is disappoint fans of the first two films with an underwhelming follow-up. I don't want people to be like, but the sequel was a little shitty, Goldberg continued. Rogan then agreed with the sentiment, saying, yeah, exactly, let's fucking leave it as it is, because it's very personal to us and based on our high school experience. It's nice that so many people find it funny and resonated with it. Despite there being no plans to make a sequel to Superbad, that's not to say that there haven't been movies that live up to its name as great teen comedy movies. While Rogan might disagree, movies like Booksmart, released in 2019, have been compared to the 2007 film, although made for a new generation of moviegoers. And I completely agree that just you really don't want to ruin that. And like I said, so if it was, the studio said, okay, we're gonna do a Superbad 2, but if you guys aren't in it, like we're doing it with we're doing it with or without you guys. So if if you guys want to come on, kind of thing, then come on. But even if you guys aren't interested, we're still making it anyway. If they did that, I'd be like, no, you can't do it. If they wanted to do it, like, Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen, if they wanted to do it and they were involved with it, writing it every step of the way, I'd be like, absolutely do it. Like, we might be a bit hesitant on it, but if they're involved with it, that's what you want. That's what you want. You want the originals. It's the same deal with like a Breaking Bad. Do you really want to see another like Breaking Bad spinoff show or another Breaking Bad movie or any form of Breaking Bad Better Call Saul continuation without Vince Gilligan involved? Like, you don't want to do it. Like, hey, they're doing season 6 of Breaking Bad, but I don't know, like, I don't know, Seth Rogen's gonna be the showrunner. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't care who it is. I don't care how good they are. Quentin Tarantino is gonna showrun. It's like, okay, cool, but Vince Gilligan kind of laid that foundation, and you can't picture it with being run by anybody else. So, and that's the same deal with Superbad. If the original writers aren't involved, then you're probably best just leaving it. And I'm fine with that, because we'll always have that little treasure of a film. Like I said, it's probably one of the funniest comedies of all time. It's probably up there. Like, you type in like best comedies of all time. Superbad's like I think easily in like the top like 5 probably. I'd say it has to be. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on that. Do you guys want there to be a sequel to Superbad? Like, it's a tricky situation, because I know like many people want to see more of it, but at the same time, you don't want to risk, if the sequel's not as good, then the first one, they look at the first one in kind of a bad light. And that's the problem with most sequels. If the first one doesn't live up, then everything else just kind of falls flat. So better off just leave it. The legacy of Superbad, you know what I mean? That's fine, as is. So anyways, guys, be sure to hop on social media. Let me know your thoughts on that, and I'm really curious to see where people stand on if there should or shouldn't be a Superbad 2, or maybe a Superbad franchise. And speaking of starting a franchise and expanding off of one movie, let's talk about this, which is Avengers 5, which we don't know what it's going to be. Is it going to be the Kang Dynasty? Is it going to be Infinity? I don't know what it's going to end up being. We basically, now this is a rumor. This is something that we should classify. Just take it with a grain of salt. There's no, I'm not really sure where this is all coming from. It's all just articles are going around. But basically, this is what they're saying is Avengers 5 cast could feature 60-plus returning MCU characters. 60-plus. The upcoming Avengers 5 could feature upwards of 60 Marvel Cinematic Universe characters making their return for the big ensemble film. This is superherohype.com. Now, according to a recent report on Deadline from Sean Levi's possible involvement in the film, Sean Levi is, of course, directing Deadpool Wolverine, which is coming up pretty soon, actually. Can't wait. It was noted that the sources close to the project revealed that more than 60 MCU characters could reprise their roles for the film. Now, that's could, and Sean Levi's possible involvement. Possible. There's nothing concrete that he is, in fact, directing it. Now, there could be some news could come out beforehand or like after I record this, and I'm like, oh, well, shit, now I look like an idiot. But it says, while nothing was confirmed, names like Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Benedict Cumberbatch, Tom Hiddleston, and more were listed. Furthermore, Deadline also reported that unlike past Avengers films, the upcoming 5th movie will see characters have equal footing as opposed to only seeing a handful of characters in charge. The film was previously named Avengers The Kang Dynasty, but was renamed to an as-of-yet official Avengers 5 following the firing of Jonathan Majors last year. Production on the project was supposed to begin sometime this year prior to the firing, but now the status of the movie was up in the air. I mean, they're going to make it either way. Like, that's currently it's still set for May 1st, 2026. They're still going to make it. They're absolutely still going to do Avengers 5. I mean, it would be absolutely asinine to even consider that they're not going to make it, especially considering that, if they want the MCU to stay strong and they want the comic book movie genre to stay alive, they got to, pick up their game, you know what I mean? Because they've been slacking these last few years. I mean, that's not to say that they haven't put out good stuff at all. I mean, obviously, Guardians 3, No Way Home, you know what I mean? We've had some great stuff, but I mean, there has been a decline. Thor: Love and Thunder. So they got a lot of redemption, in my eyes anyway, and I think to a lot of people as well. But I'm hearing this 60 plus cast members. Now, like I said, we don't know if this is confirmed. This is just, he said, she said. We don't know. It's saying reports from Deadline about a possible Sean Levi return. Like, even that's up in the air. We don't know what the hell's going on with that. Here's the thing. So Avengers Infinity War had this problem. As much as I like Avengers Infinity War, I found they jam-packed that movie too much. They jam-packed it way too much, I thought. It was still a fantastic movie. Infinity War was still great, but I found there was still too much. It was, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, and they were able to do it better because they had, 3 hours and 30 minutes. So, but yeah, that was my biggest gripe with Infinity War, is that they kind of overstuffed it a little bit. And if they're doing this with like 60 plus cast members returning, I'm worried it's going to be even worse. That's my fear. Now, that's, like I said, contingent on if this is true or not. What I liked about how they did it with No Way Home was, yes, we had all of these returning people. We had Jamie Foxx come back as Electro. We had Tobey Maguire come back as Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield come back as Spider-Man. We had Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin. Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. Like we had everybody come back. But I was not worried, or not worried. I was impressed by how they gave them all equal time to shine in like 2 hours and 15 minutes. And then at its core, it still remained focused on Tom Holland's Spider-Man. But I'm worried if they're going to just throw in all of these characters. Like if they're, let's say, for example, just for argument's sake, that they're going to bring back Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, or they're going to bring back Chris Evans as Captain America. At this point, I mean, I think it's possible that they could. Whether they will or not, that's entirely another debate that I've covered several times on this show. So it's tricky. We'll see what they do. But I'm worried that if they just... Because here's the thing. Even though I mentioned that, I said, okay, the MCU, they have to pick things up because they've been slacking the last few years. But if they put too much in, like 60 plus returning cast members, let's say you got Robert Downey Jr. come back, you got Chris Evans come back, you got, I don't know, bring back Josh Brolin as Thanos. I don't know, I'm just listing off all these names. You bring back Toby and Andrew. You bring back, I don't know, fucking Ned from Spider-Man No Way Home comes back. I don't know. Like if they throw in all these people, hell, Deadpool and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. There's people talking about that. I don't know. I mean, it's possible considering that Sean Levi might direct it, and that's emphasis on might. We don't know if that's true or not. But so if they do that, are we going to get a nice story that, really, really focuses at its core on the Avengers and what's going on? Like that's my fear, is that they're just going to be, it's going to be, in this case, quantity over quality. They're going to put too much shit in there, and then they're just going to throw it all at the wall, try and make it stick, and some of the arcs will land and some of them won't. My fear is that none of them are going to work because there's too many people in it. Now, that's my thoughts. I'm kind of just rambling off the top of my head with this, but as soon as I heard this, and whether it's true or not, if it's true, it's something to fear, I think, a little bit. Because, I mean, like I said, even though Infinity War was great, they overstuffed it a little bit, and they could have, shaved a little bit off, and you know what I mean? Like, there was lots more they could have done without jam-packing it all in, like they were stuffing a turkey. So anyway, yeah, we'll see how it goes. But just my thoughts is that I think they're just going for quantity over quality. And I think in a way it's almost like Kevin Feige's like, you know what? We need people to come back to the MCU. We want people to remain invested. Let's just bring back everybody we can. Bring back Robert Downey Jr. Don't give him an arc. Just bring him in. It's okay. Bring back Toby and Andrew. Bring back Chris Evans. Bring back Josh Brolin. Hell, bring back Ben Affleck's Daredevil. You know what I mean? And just... like I said, it's like throwing shit at the wall and seeing if it sticks. Will it stick? We'll find out. We'll find out if it does. This could all be for nothing, but that's just my thoughts on the article. But definitely, guys, be sure to let me know your thoughts. I'm really, really curious to see where people stand on this. Is it a good idea? Is it quantity over quality in this case? Do you guys want quantity over quality, or do you want just quality? You want the quantity, but you also want quality. The quantity is nothing if you don't got good quality. Yeah, that's what I think. Anyways, yeah, be sure to let me know your thoughts on that, guys. And that's it. That's gonna do it for the podcast today, guys. I want to thank Bob LeMent for coming on from Static Radio. Be sure to check out Static Radio. It's been going on since 1998, going strong. Hell, I'll be 25 soon, so it's been going on 26 years. I was born in 99, and it started the year that I was probably in my mother's stomach. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's enough about that. Thank you so much, Bob, for coming on, and thank you guys for listening to the show today. Be sure to check out Is He Awake? A Last Toast to Old Matt Daly this Friday and Saturday, June 21st to 22nd at the St. James and St. John's United Church Center. Tickets are $25, and be sure to come support local theater. And warning, you may die laughing. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, this is Franky signing off. Have a great week, guys.